Howdy and good afternoon. Now, I waited till this point of the day to do news of the day for two reasons. One, there's a lot going on around here and it's hard to keep track of. And two, um, the NHL, there's a lot going on and it's hard to keep track of there too. First up, the Washington Capitals, they acquired Carl Hagelin from the Kings for a 2019 third rounder and a conditional 2026 rounder, likely based on Hagelin signing an extension with the Capitals. They've essentially traded Tanner Pearson for nada. Now, Pearson being traded for not enough doesn't come up to Eberle being traded for not enough by the Oilers, but it shows that the Kings, for me, are showing that um, you have a chance to remake your roster. Make sure you're doing it right. And they definitely lost that trade. Hagelin did not have the rebound for the Kings that Pearson did for the Penguins. So, that being said, of course, Pearson's not tearing up the league scoring-wise, but he has performed better in Pittsburgh than Hagelin did with the Kings. And right when Hagelin arrived, the idea was that he was probably not going to last very long with the Kings. And what the Capitals are saying is, yay, this improves our speed, and this is why Smith Pelly got waived. The idea being Smith Pelly gets off the roster, Hagelin takes his spot. It adds some speed to that roster. The Jets admit after last night's game that they were awful. There's some quotes out there from Lowry and others about how bad they played. But I want to answer that it's right on, I think it was NBC, I saw it. Laine's not getting traded. Jeremy Roenick threw out there, maybe they're going to trade Laine. Look, Patrick Laine has been in a huge slump for months. And, I've talked about how he's got to get better and he's not playing very well. That being said, he's 20 years of age. He has scored over 100 goals in the NHL already. And they would be absolutely certifiably insane to trade Patrick Laine right now. Unless they were going to get a King's ransom back. Because what he's done, he's actually kind of done the Jets a favor. They're headed for a cap apocalypse of their own. And he's driven his value down. At least on some level, his value's been driven down by this cold streak since the end of November. So, no. If that rumor gets any traction, no. Smith Pelly being unclaimed means he could be traded. So why would you trade for a guy who you could have had for free on waivers? Because when you trade for him, since he's already cleared, you can just send him straight to the American Hockey League. You don't have to put him on waivers yourself. So Smith Pelly may very well end up getting traded. Of course, rumor has it he reported to training camp out of shape, and he just never quite got with it this year. So after a really solid playoffs for Washington, he may find himself out of the league this year, and I don't know where he ends up next year. Now, Boston Bruins, of course, added Charlie Coyle, and Don Sweeney says that may be all they do. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that. I honestly can't stand seeing top prospects and draft picks thrown away with the idea of, we've got to do this now, because very often the team that wins the Stanley Cup didn't make a big panic move at the deadline and didn't add a bunch of big names. They may have added names in the previous offseason. They may have added somebody in November. But, that trade deadline, it really gets overrated. And if you put too much into that trade deadline, and I think Boston did last year, it can really, really hurt you in seasons going forward. So, Coyle, who I keep hearing about his scoring depth, but I looked it up. He's been held pointless in 9 of his last 10 games before being traded from Minnesota. So I think people really need to temper their expectation of what Coyle's going to do in Boston. He might go on a Ryan Spooner type run. Spooner went on a run after he got traded to the Rangers. I don't know that that's going to happen, but we'll see. I wanted to talk a bit today about GMs who suddenly look smart. GMs that at some point before this season or during this season people were complaining about. The one that stands out the most in Montreal is Marc Bergevin, who we were all talking about and joking about for years now. And he actually looks pretty smart based on the deals he's made this season. And we can all point to ones he's made that he probably shouldn't have, but every GM has those. And Ron Hextall, hear me out. The Philadelphia Flyers have done nothing to improve that goaltending except bring up Carter Hart. And really, honestly, I'm not sure why Hextall got fired. That, remember, at the time they fired Hextall, was, we got to do something this year. What have they done? So Hextall looks a lot better right now to me as a GM than he did, because I don't see what Philly's done to fix anything to where they look much better now than they did when he got fired. I'm not sure, unless there was something else going on there. Something else that they didn't like about the way that things were going with Hextall. It's one of those things that'll come out as years go on. Stan Bowman in Chicago. So early this year, we're all talking about cap problems for Chicago. Chicago looks old, they look slow. And then he makes the Strome trade. And while I love Nick Schmaltz, and Schmaltz played very well for Arizona when he went there, Strome being reunited with DeBrincat has been fantastic. DeBrincat's now scoring at a point a game on the season, and Strome's been near that over the last couple of months. Bowman suddenly looks brilliant. And that's how quickly these things can turn. Another one, Doug Armstrong. Remember early this season we were talking about how Buffalo had fleeced the St. Louis Blues, and this is just, Ryan O'Reilly, the guy's just destined to lose, and maybe he's the problem. Look where Buffalo is. Well, 11-game winning streak. Suddenly Doug Armstrong looks like a pretty smart GM. So that's interesting to me how quickly these things change. This is why when people complain about this GM and that GM, I don't just pile on very, very often. Even Chiarelli, I resisted it till the very end where I'm like, yeah, I can't defend this anymore. Speaking of which, Ryan Spooner will make his debut for the Canucks. Luke Schen's up as well, and they're talking about trying to rekindle their careers as members of the Canucks. What else are they going to say? And all more power to them. If Luke Schenn could somehow find any part of the physical defensive side of his game that made him a coveted defenseman at one point in his career, the Canucks would definitely look to keep him. They could definitely use that in their lineup. And Spooner, decent 40-point forward at his peak. If he could rediscover some of that scoring touch, the Canucks would keep him around. I'm not expecting it. Nylander is going to be at center with Kadri out. That means the Toronto media is up at Nylander going, hey, you're going to play center. And he's like, yeah, I've played center a lot. I'm fine. It'll be very interesting to see how Nylander does. Now, if Nylander plays really, really well at center, what do you do? Do you throw him back on the wing? And if Nylander is more comfortable as a center, what does that mean for Kadri's place on the team? Because they've already long-term committed to Nylander and Kadri. And I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about this offseason. This coming offseason, Kyle Dubas looked and went, you know what, if we could get Kadri off the books, it'd be a lot easier for us to make some moves on the blue line. We could just have Nylander play third-line center and play special teams. Yeah, that would be a very interesting setup. And there's definitely a lot of pieces on the Toronto Maple Leafs that could be moved to various different lines because they have a lot of talented forwards. I have no problem admitting that. Mike Hoffman's been asked to submit his 10-team no-trade list by the Florida Panthers. Doesn't necessarily mean he's getting traded. It means they're at least listening to offers, and they want to make sure he'd be willing to go to the teams that they're talking to. So Hoffman may find his way out of Florida. I'm okay with this. And I'll tell you why I'm okay, because, the rumor that Huberdeau might be the one to go, I didn't like that. Hoffman, that makes sense to me. He just came in this year. He's scored relatively well, but he's cooled off lately. So it would make sense to me that Florida would look at him as the top 6 forward. They say, yeah, we can part with him as a rental at the deadline, get something back. Be very interesting to see what they get. And Duchesne is listed as questionable for tonight. So while it's been reported he won't play anymore, he's done as a Senator, now we're hearing he's questionable. We'll see what happens, right? Is there a move for Duchesne coming? It's part of the reason why this video is getting posted relatively late for my usual time frame. But, no further trades other than Hagelin at this stage for today. Once I get this posted, a bunch of stuff's going to happen. That seems to be the way things go. But let me know what you guys think, and especially regarding GM suddenly not looking too bad. Like I said, Hextall, I'm not saying that where Philly is right now shows Hextall was a genius or anything. I'm just not sure why the firing took place when it did, when you look at what Philly's done since he left. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just tap it upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.